It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Aggronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belghast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 512. Tonight I'm joined by Ammo.
Hello.
Ashgar.
Hello.
Tam.
Hello.
And Thalen.
Already? Hey.
Yeah, that feels real weird when we're down a few people. So we had one topic that ended up getting missed last week because I was not paying close attention.
We're professionals.
Music makes a difference, aka Star Citizen Fight for Pyro.
Yeah, this was not actually a topic about an arcade machine, believe it or not.
Yeah, for whatever reason, I thought the one from last week, I thought you would put on the list. I didn't click through to see that it was a TAM topic.
Yeah, so I've been playing more Star Citizen with the most recent patch. And last year, the big Star Citizen thing was getting some systems up and running. I didn't play a lot because there wasn't a lot to play. It was a lot of back-end server stuff that enables other things, but doesn't really change the game experience. So it was all right, mostly the same kinds of games, mostly the same kinds of stuff to do, but with weird, hitherto unexpected instability as they sort things out. This is starting. It's starting to be, and they're saying that this is what they want this year to be. This is the year of content. End of last year, they added a whole bunch of new mission types and missions, and they've been running events in game that have the PvE events where there's a story that's unfolding. And the big thing that they released was Pyro, which is the second system and increases the size of the game by 150%. It's a lot. But also, there's music now. And I don't think I realized how sparse the music was in the game. There were a few places, I remember it felt really epic on the approach to Orizon, one of the planets, one of the cities on one of the planets, because there's music as you come in for a landing. And there just wasn't a lot of that elsewhere in the game. And now it's all over the game. And it's incredible how transformative it is for the things I was already doing. It's got some really slick kind of transition stuff. And there's a new flight minigame thing as you're flying between systems. And it's got some really epic, intense music as you're flying through this wormhole. And it makes just this otherwise fairly mundane thing feel really exciting. And it's also been really good for communicating the places I'm in, especially in a new system. I don't always know, is this place safe? Is this place unsafe? It's sort of hard to tell sometimes. And
now you have unsafe music.
Yeah, places that are weapons free versus places that aren't have music to help. There's tense music in places that are dangerous. And
that would help considerably.
It's great. And one of the things that's really neat about it is the game, it knows when you're in combat. And it has a very, very, it doesn't have limitations on what you can do in or out of combat other than logging out, where it'll just warn you, hey, you're in combat. You're going to persist in the world for a little bit. Is that okay with you? But knowing that I'm in combat is huge. It's oh, someone's shooting at me, or some there's an NPC shooting at me, or there's somebody nearby. It's really great information to just sort of get via the musical cues.
Well, just sound cues in general are really important, and you don't notice how important they are until they're added in after not having them. Because one of the situations, like, this is not a Star Citizen thing, but, recently Path of Exile added a very obvious audio cue to Detonate Dead. And it is unmistakable. Like, you cannot miss it now. In Path of Exile 1. And after years of not having a real good cue because the screen is always full of nonsense, having that audio cue immediately knows, nope, I need to movement speed out of this area real quick. And I've had that experience before in various games when they add new cues and then suddenly everything gets easier because you're not just relying on visual indicators. Your auditory indicators are also giving you a bunch of information.
Yeah. And it's also sort of neat that the musical cues change. There's a really slick thing that it does that there's you're in a potentially dangerous space and hey, there are enemies here. And then you targeted a combat ship. That's not just some hauler with a gun attached. That's an actual fighter. That's a real threat. The music kicks up a notch. But it only does that when you've targeted them and they exist. And it's just an interesting ooh, there's something there. But
yeah, I know when we were doing Arcadian fights in Final Fantasy XIV, I spent more time learning the audio cues for things happening than I really did for some of the visual cues, because it seemed to cut through the clutter of the fights.
Yeah. It's been really neat seeing that. Just seeing the different things that come online with it. There's also NPC. There's also a bunch more NPCs, some of whom are listening to music, and it's really funny to be walking. Just walking along a city street, and you can hear somebody just blasting music in their headphones, and it gets the sound just right. That it has that person's listening to their music really loud as you walk past.
I always find in-world music like that to be really interesting.
Yeah.
And especially scenarios where it's not just the one thing that you also have access to, a la Fallout, when the radio is just playing the thing that's also playing in your head. Cyberpunk 2077 did that really well, where there was a lot of in-world music happening that was, made sense to the context.
Yeah. I love that diegetic in-world music. It's not something that you see a lot of.
I remember BioShock had a lot of in-world music as well, and it, added to the creepiness especially.
Yeah, it's great when it's used well.
Probably my favorite in-game audio is actually in-game video. All of the Night Springs videos from Alan Wake.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I think the entirety of that plays out in various areas of the game as you're going through it, but, they're usually in a back room somewhere on, a little television, and but it's always there kind of in the background. And if you seek it out, they're not just the same thing playing over and over. There's a bunch of unique episodes.
Yeah, you'll come in an area and the TV will flip on, it'll play. That and all the I loved all the creepy puppet videos in Control.
They were amazing. Truly disturbing.
Yes.
So this week I've been playing Avowed, which is what if Obsidian made an Elder Scrolls game, but it's been kind of poorly marketed.
Extremely poorly marketed.
But basically it is an Elder Scrolls game without any of the bullshit associated with a Bethesda game. So
what
basically,
do you mean by that?
all of that simulationist nonsense that often just kind of gets in the way of having fun in those games just doesn't exist. Like, for example, there is technically an encumbrance system, but you can fast travel while encumbered. You just move slowly. But most of the things that you pick up don't have any weight associated with them. It's only weapons and your chest armor that has any weight associated with it. And also, at any point, you can just say, send to camp, or break it down into materials, and the materials weigh nothing. And there's not just like copious amounts of random world clutter. It's like, if it exists, it probably matters. There's just a lot of things that work better. These are all things that like I would install mods to make Elder Scrolls function like in another game system. Like treasure has an audible Nirnroot style noise. So as you're roaming around, if you hear it, it entices you to try and figure out the environmental puzzle that allows you to get to wherever it's at. Lockpicks are just a consumable, but it's very well written, as in most Obsidian things are. Have some interesting characters. It's set in the Pillars of Eternity universe, which I know nothing about. Companions are not useless.
Pillars 1 is a game that exists, and Pillars 2 is legitimately quite good. Even though Pillars 2 is supposed to be a direct sequel, it summarizes Pillars 1 at the start of Pillars 2.
Maybe I should just try and play Pillars 2. Because now I'm actually interested in the world.
It's a cool world! Pillars 1 just doesn't do a great job of setting it up.
It feels very Morrowindy, because like you start on the dock of a settlement. Well, technically you start on a shipwrecked on an island, and then eventually you make it to a settlement and you're on the dock. But so far I've picked up 2 companions. You can have them out at the same time. You're not limited to the traditional Bethesda 1+ thing, where you have your sole companion. It's got a camp system similar to Baldur's Gate 3. And while you're in the camp, you can upgrade your weapons and upgrade your armor and things like that. The special items in the world don't seem to be that wildly different than the items that you can just pick up and slowly upgrade over time. So you're not getting, like, if you find a legendary item, it is better, but it is not night and day better. Seems like there's a lot of replayability, because like there's a lot of ways to resolve things. Like I've encountered several ways to resolve things without even getting into combat. You can also go full murder hobo and attack everything. Like I have basically made it to the second settlement now. So I'm only a little bit of the way in. So I've been through the tutorial and resolved the main quest of the first little area. So I'm in technically the third area at this point. But I've also heard it's like a 40-ish hour game instead of a 200-ish hour game.
I mean, I think they were probably more interested in building a narrative than a simulationist world.
Right. Yes.
Obsidian is great at making sequels to games, so this is kind of like a Pillar sequel.
Well, and it's also kind of like them doing an Elder Scrolls game. It kind of distills the Elder Scrolls thing down to the core elements, and I think I like it.
I think that it's interesting to see people, like, for such a long time, Elder Scrolls was the only, like, Bethesda was the only company doing anything like that. And I feel like it's interesting to see other people sort of try things in that space.
I mean, it feels like it's just been Obsidian, because they also made Outer Worlds.
Yeah.
But if this is any indication of the improvements that they've made since they released Outer Worlds, I'm really looking forward to Outer Worlds 2.
Well, I mean, I also think that like Cyberpunk is definitely occupying that kind of space.
Right.
That's fair.
I'm just still waiting for another game in the world of tyranny.
Never going to happen, unfortunately.
I know.
I'm sad about this too. It's Paradox's property, and Obsidian made it, and that combination is probably never going to get together again.
Yeah.
It was so good. Like,
yeah, but it sold like an Obsidian game.
I mean, when you don't promote things. Like, I feel like you had to have walked into a room where someone scrawled the name onto a napkin and you were curious enough to Google it to have found that game. I know I've shared it with everyone that has ever stopped to listen with me.
I know I shared it with some people on this podcast.
Yeah, like anytime somebody talks about wanting a good CRPG, like I'm there in the sidelines, ready to hand them Tyranny.
See, I feel like if games in that style, Tyranny is very high up on the list. Wrath of the Righteous is way high up on that list at this point, but that didn't exist when Tyranny came out. You also have to deal with Pathfinder 1 rules, but yeah, it's doable. Also, that game has difficulty settings. Both of those games do.
Which helps a lot.
Also, interesting thing that I learned, apparently Game Pass and Battle.net are hooked together now officially, and games that you are granted access to through Game Pass are also available to be installed through Battle.net.
The only game I've seen there that's the crossover is specifically Avowed.
Well, apparently, if you've got Game Pass, all of the Blizzard games show up for you if you don't have licenses through any other scenario. So, like, I would kind of like maybe Microsoft just to standardize on Battle.net, because it's still better than the Microsoft Store. Because even though it goes through the Xbox app, it's still mostly just the Microsoft Store.
If they hear you say that, they're just going to get rid of Battle.net.
I guess. Mm-hmm. Battle.net at least has the functionality to move games between drives. And a default chat system that's not quite so cancerous.
I mean, one could argue.
So how about those 19 Ascendancies?
I haven't even I haven't even fully comprehended this information.
They're nonsense. There's so many of these that are just complete nonsense. I don't know if it was Thursday or Friday that they set the date for the Legacy of Phrecia event in Path of Exile. It is February 20th. It will officially go for a month, but may get extended. Who knows?
Will probably get extended.
I would like to note that I saw this topic listed and thought it was a Magic the Gathering topic, but that's Spyrex.
No. Different word. Yeah, so what's going to be wild about this is they've replaced all 19 Ascendancies, but also you'll be able to Forbidden Flesh and Forbidden Flame in the normal Ascendancy nodes, which makes me wonder if these will ever show up as Forbidden Flesh and Flame jewels.
That would be wild, but
yeah,
that would be extremely wild.
Like, most of them I can see a build in. The only one that I can't necessarily see a build in is Behemoth.
Really? Because Behemoth is the one I'm looking at going,
The one that turns off all spells.
Yes, I'm aware it turns off all spells. Auras are spells, so that means you can't use those.
Berserk is a spell.
Yeah, but you didn't need to use that.
Blood Rage is a spell.
I was already not using Berserk on my Berserker because, mostly because of right of whatever wants you to have as much rage as possible, and so does Rage Vortex.
Banners are also sadly spells.
That's actually a problem.
Yeah, so basically you won't have any kind of ongoing buffs that you
will have fortification.
Only because it's being given through the Ascendancy.
You can get it through the tree other than that, but even if you don't get it through the Ascendancy, you'll definitely have it.
Right, you can get it through a gym, you can get it through weapon corrupts, you can get it through a bunch of different ways. Yeah, like it's gonna be a wild ride to make that work, I think.
I mean, the answer is almost certainly going to be war cries and something to do with rage.
Big bonk, big slam.
Big bonk, indeed, yes.
I'm kind of leaning towards Ancestral Commander. I don't know what I'm gonna do with it, but it's just got so many defenses on it. It's essentially got Defiance of Destiny built into it. I mean, I'm still kind of interested in Servant of Arakali and trying to make it a poison minion build.
I'm looking at that one and thinking very strongly of trying to play Herald of Agony as a build.
I mean, I think either.
But I'm also looking at
the Herald's one.
Herald for that specific reason as well.
Yeah, like I think that's probably like being pushed more into the Herald build. The Paladin. I'm real sad that it's a link skills matter.
If only link skills were good.
Yeah, like, okay.
I mean, it doesn't really, it's got, I want to say 3 nodes that focus on link skills, but enough others to fill out an Ascendancy, right?
Yeah, it's got enough other stuff that you could make something out of it. Pretty much all of these have enough other stuff that you can not follow the very clear path that they've set out for you. The one that I don't really know what to do with is Polytheist.
That one just cracks me up for its theme.
It's basically just all of the gods that you end up capturing in the second half of the game, giving you some node. But none of them really have much synergy with each other.
Yeah, there's not a ton of synergy here.
Like, there's going to be a lot of there's going to be a lot of people that consider it just for the Devout of Ralakesh.
There's a lot of raw power here.
Because basically it's like Ralakesh boots on an Ascendancy node.
Like, Devout of Lunaris gives you the, Fury Valve?
Yeah.
On an Ascendancy, so you can just cast targeted spell. Like, this says Shockwave Totem to me, but several other things don't work quite as well with that, although Ralakesh along with that does work pretty well. So maybe that could be a thing.
Yeah, I mean, because if you went down the Endurance Brutality route, that in itself, and being able to stack a bunch of charges, that's pretty powerful.
Ralakesh does just give you minimum charges. It doesn't give you the same thing as the boots do.
Yeah, you're right. It's not giving you both sets of charges. Pox right now is theory crafting the Scion Scavenger for an RF build.
I mean, Scavenger is funny.
Scavenger is like even more cracked than Ascendant is by normal means.
Well, it's an Ascendant. Let's just gather up a bunch of item passives and stick it on the passive tree.
Right.
Like, Cloak of Flame is here as a node you can take.
But you can also wear a Cloak of Flame and have double the benefit.
Yes, you can take 80% of hits physical damage as fire damage and basically not have to worry about armor. So yeah, I like these. I think they're funny.
I'm shocked that they haven't just YOLO'd and turned this into a league of its own.
I don't think they want to not have all of the traditional things available during a league. And I also think this is going to be extremely not balanced. Like, to a ridiculous degree, this is going to be extremely not balanced.
Yeah, I mean, the story behind this is these are all ideas that they've had kicking around for a while, but were too whatever for some reason to ever make it into the game. So these are all things that got cut at some point as an idea of a redesign.
Oh, we still don't know a quarter of the abilities for Scavenger. That's funny.
Yeah, one of the nodes hasn't been highlighted yet. But apparently these exist in POB so that you can theory craft it before the event launches.
Good luck.
These are just
that one.
like these are just so wildly different that you're just going to have to roll into it without much of a plan and adapt as you go.
Path of Exile is not a game particularly good with that, but sure.
No.
Like, at least this is still going to be based on settlers, so gold respecs are going to be a thing.
And easy gear. Because, like, shipments for Settlers of Kalgur produce some shockingly good gear. And the Gambler also produces some shockingly good gear. I mean, I got my Ice Trap character up and running with mostly Gambler and shipment gear.
I have no idea what kind of gear the Gambler's going to want.
No, I mean Gambler as in the currency trader dude that sells specific bases. Gambler, I don't know. Like, I think Gambler is the most trap of the ability of the builds. Because, like, it's just a lot of, I hope you're lucky.
Yeah, I don't love this. I don't love any of this design.
Your critical strike is lucky. Your damage with hits is unlucky.
Oh boy.
So basically, you gotta build the crit all the time.
Well, that just says don't use lightning damage. But other than that, like, it's probably fine. Maybe also don't use Rizloth's Coil or any of its similar effects.
Yeah, like, I mean, okay, so basically you don't want to make this a block build and take either of those because they have heads and tails. One makes spell damage block lucky, the other one makes attack block lucky, and then the other is unlucky.
I mean, I think lucky attack damage block in exchange for unlucky spell damage block is probably worth it.
Yeah, since most of your spell damage is going to be elemental, and it's gets soaked by your better defensive layers.
Yes.
But also Svalin exists, and you can do fun things with that, so... And they tend to be common enough that they're not that expensive.
I mean, in a limited league, I wouldn't bet on any of that, but yeah.
I mean, even in Pox League, they're not that bad. I don't remember what they're at right now, but... I mean, you still... It's like 2 divines, which is not super cheap, but it's not outrageous.
It's not planning around having this early, though.
Yeah, you're not going to have it early. But also, block just in general as a layer takes a little bit to get online because you're going to need some additional support to make it feel good, either via gems or additional support from the tree or something. I don't know. It's going to be wild. I'm looking forward to it, and it will give me a week of joy, and then I'll roll into Monster Hunter Wilds and learn how to play Monster Hunter again.
I will, I promise, this time learn the Gunlance.
I'm just happy that PC and consoles can play together, because
Oh, good. Finally.
that lets
Oh my
everyone
gosh.
be on whatever platform they want to be on.
Yep.
Yes, that's so good.
I'm calling it audible, but if any of our listeners are Monster Hunter fans, you should totally hit up Ammo to turn your cats into Palicos.
Yes.
Yes, I'm doing sketch commissions right now to turn your kitties into Palicos.
They are delightful.
And I've seen the base sketch, and it looks adorable. And basically, Gracie is causing a mess, and Josie is going to look very suspicious.
Yep.
And it will get added to my ever-growing masthead of ammo art. But yeah, like what's that, the 28th for?
Yes.
Yeah, I've not been playing much of the beta just because I don't want to burn myself out, but I am looking forward to having another go at Monster Hunter. Like, I really enjoyed Worlds when it launched. I played the heck out of Worlds to the point of like completing all of the armor sets from all of the random events that happened for the last first couple months. I did a lot of solo queuing or whatever the thing where
SOS stuff.
Yep. I would hop in and kill bosses, and I don't know if I'm going to go longsword again or if I'm going to do something else. Like
Bel,
I'm
you play Rise at all?
Not much. I barely got into Rise.
So a major change that happened during Rise that to basically the longsword is that they added an ability called like Special Sheath and several moves out of it. The longsword is very heavily a counter-attack weapon.
Okay.
Which is funny because like previously I would call Lance the primary counterattack weapon, and it still is, but longsword is definitely a different way to do similar sorts of things.
Yeah, like longsword I would have said in World was very much a poke and then move and then poke and then move and then do your multi-point combo.
Yep.
I've never done Sword and Shield, and I've always kind of wanted to do Sword and Shield. So I've contemplated forcing myself to do Sword and Shield.
In the same sort of way I'm contemplating forcing myself to do then, Lance?
Probably, yeah. Like, it's a thing I've always been interested in, but I've never sat down and forced myself to do it. But I know, like, mounting with Sword and Shield usually is pretty easy. So
the secret best mounting weapon in the world was Lance, to the consternation of everyone I played with that played main Insect Glaive.
Insect Glaive is the weapon you use if you want to set up your friends to steal your routes. It's incredibly good for that. It's so good for making your friends go, man, it was really easy to mount that monster.
Yeah, I played with Pizza Maid a lot, and she was a Sword and Shield main and was always getting the mounts.
So the Lance charge has a hop, and the attack from that hop does a silly, stupid amount of mount damage for no good reason. So either two of those gets you the mount yourself, or if you have an Insect Glaive friend, one of those gets you the mount.
I love the look of Switchblade or Switch Axe. I just don't ever do very well with it.
So I did run at least one mission on every weapon in World, and I had Switch Axe was probably my least favorite.
It was real awkward.
It's real good for people who know how to do it. It's apparently the speedrunner weapon of choice for like speedrunning the actual game proper. Like there are some strategies for speedrunning specific monsters that it's not the best weapon, but for if you were playing the actual game, it's like one of the best choices.
I always felt like I was in the wrong form at the wrong time. Like, I'm also a big fan of Hammer.
Hammer's probably my second least favorite.
Like, I feel like Hammer and Greatsword are doing similar things, but I like the way Hammer's doing it a bit better.
I never actually got into the beta or tried playing much of anything. I hear Insect Glaive got weirded.
They made some errors, let's call it, with their Insect Glaive design that they are fixing for launch.
Oh, good.
Let's call it that. They removed aerial dance or whatever it is, the thing where you actually bounce off the monster. They just straight up removed it. And everyone who ever played Insect Glaive went, why in the world did you do this?
They removed the defining characteristic of it.
Correct. So they're putting it back and also giving you like a damage bonus for each time you do it to encourage you to actually do it.
Oh, that rules, actually.
So
cool.
So you can just be a Dragoon.
You can be a Dragoon again. Yes.
It was so fun.
So yeah, like they're like, we're going to put some more emphasis on using the bug more and yada yada. Like, but
that's not what people want.
No, it was not what people wanted. They got feedback that said this is not what people want, and they are making adjustments. So great. Other weapons getting feedback that is not in the beta. Switch Axe is actually one of them. Apparently, it just does terrible damage in the beta, so they're working on that. Even people who like know what they're doing are getting significantly worse times with it. Lance also a little weaker than anticipated. They removed the like normal counterattack stance. Another thing that like, why in the world did you do this? This was the best thing in the world. So I think they're re-adding that. They seem to think that like going into a power guard is the proper way to do that, but that's really kind of annoying. So that's getting addressed too. And I think the other thing is, I don't remember what the, oh, right. Bow is overpowered in the beta. It has the most obscene focus attack, and its auto lock on is ridiculous. And they want to make some of these things not necessarily weaker, but take a little longer to do. So you can't just instantly lock on to every wound on the monster and blow them all up at once for 1,000,000 damage.
Aw.
I don't know. I'm mostly looking forward to great cooking animations. As a grizzled chef cat makes me giant steaks.
I don't actually know who the chef is in this one.
I didn't play enough to find out. I basically played through the tutorial.
You can't access meals in the beta.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have no idea what the chef is going to be. The chef and Rise were a bunch of cats that made you dango.
Yes, I did not find it as joyful as angry cat chef makes steak.
I mean, it's pretty hard to top that.
Make steak no matter what ingredients you give him.
Exactly. Everything steak.
I ordered a veggie platter. Steak.
Chicken is a kind of vegetable, right? So Grace is not here this week and has shot ahead a lot in this game, but Soulstone Survivors?
Soulstone Survivors. Soulstone Survivors is another game that is like Vampire Survivors, except you can aim. You can actually move and aim in different directions. It is 3D with a kind of low poly art style. I really kind of love it.
Looks very cartoony.
It is pretty cartoony. There are a bunch of different characters. Each characters differ mostly in two ways. One of them is their weapon and their associated weapon skills. So each character has like a few skills that only they have access to. And the other thing is each character gets only a certain subcategory of skills. Like the Spellblade gets slash, thrust, lightning, arcane, and ice, I want to say. And like the warrior gets like slash, thrust, slam, earth, and something else. So like from character to character, what you have access to is kind of varied. Eventually, I know you get character-specific passive trees, because the big thing about this game is that this is a meta progression simulator. Like, that's its big thing. There is it feels like an endless layer of trying to unlock the next thing. And this goes multiple layers deep. Not like this Gaia layers deep, but still. You collect minor soul crystals to advance things in your passive tree and also buy characters. Every time you beat a boss, it drops a big soul crystal, which you may need to unlock certain other things. Getting achievements unlocks certain things. Advancing in the talent tree can unlock runic power, which can get you runes, which are passives you can equip that are earned via several other ways, like doing character-specific things or certain other achievements that they may ask you to do. And it feels like I'm never going to reach the bottom of this.
Yeah, wow.
Steam tells me there are 366 achievements.
Wow. That is nonsense.
It really kind of is. I mean, a lot of these are reach prestige level X with X character, and there are a lot of characters. Sure. You can craft different weapons to change some of the fixed skills. You can upgrade your weapons, upgrade your runes to get things like essential. Like, there are so many layers of this, and I'm just scratching the surface already. My favorite character so far is probably the Pyromancer. My next favorite is probably the Paladin. Although mostly that's just because the Paladin is really, really easy to play with. The Holy Spell category is just very good.
Yeah, I feel like in games, Holy is either one of the best things or completely useless.
Yeah, in this case, it is definitely on the better side. I haven't found a completely useless skill category at all yet, though, so they all have their perks. Damage over time seems to be pretty strong in some cases. Anyhow, I hear there's some books I should be checking out.
Yes. We are going to evangelize for a series of books, which is technically in the amorphous lit RPG genre of books.
Yeah,
whatever that means.
I think it's like the book equivalent of isekai light novels.
Yeah,
basically. It's books about
the Western equivalent.
Books involving game mechanics, basically.
Yeah, it definitely has those.
So, like, I talked about this just briefly last week, but Thalen tipped me off to this series. It is called Dungeon Crawler Carl, and essentially, it's got all of these elements from other things that like, so remember in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy when the Earth was being demolished for, a toll road, intergalactic
hyperspace bypass.
Yeah. So it's got kind of that feel where basically the planet Earth is being repoed by this company that is going to mine it for its resources. And all of the citizens of the Earth are given the opportunity to not die by participating in a dungeon crawl.
Well, those who survived the initial, mining of flattening every single, construction on the planet, and everybody who's inside when this happens, they're dead.
Yeah.
But so a friend of mine, like a while back, we were talking about books we'd been reading, and he mentioned these and suggested them. He told me a little about what they are, and honestly, my first thought was that sounds kind of dumb,
Right?
but also, like, I know this guy. I know this guy, and I share a lot of taste in books. Like, and he's the guy that had me read Jonathan Strange and and Mr. Norrell, and various things like that. So I was like, well, I'll check it out. And it is kind of dumb.
Right, yeah, like, I remember looking up this series when Thalen suggested it. I'm like, really? Okay. I trust Thalen.
Yeah, but it's also just ludicrous amounts of fun.
Yeah, so, like, the main character, Carl, is kind of like the quips of Duke Nukem or, Ash from Evil Dead, but good-natured and also, like, very caring and kind-hearted. So, yeah. And also loves his cat. And really, it is the cat that nails this series. So essentially, like,
Princess Donut, the Queen Anne Chonk,
is a show cat and is a Persian and jumps out the window, and Carl has to go out into the street
at 2
a.m. to try and get her back, and he steps in a pair of pink Crocs, and he's got on boxers, and only manages to get, like, a jacket on. And anyone who's ever stepped out of the house to do something like that probably understands that situation where you're only expecting to be out there for a second. And then all of the buildings flatten to the earth, and he's there holding the cat. And
the announcement happens.
Ends up going into the dungeon, and mostly because it is freezing outside, and they're in the Seattle area, I think.
Yeah, they're in Seattle at 2 a.m. in winter, and yeah.
And he's wearing boxers and Crocs and holding a cat, and the dungeon entrance looks warm. So essentially, like, there are all these achievements that are constantly scrolling by, and this is like, we're not going to give away the entirety of the book. This is like the first few minutes of the book. But this is important. He's the first person to enter the dungeon holding a cat and gets an achievement for that, giving him a legendary pet box.
Yep.
And in it is a legendary pet biscuit.
Which will have a random effect on the pet that eats it. There are 100 possibilities. And so Carl's kind of like, well, should I risk it? Should I save it? Because it's pretty valuable. I could maybe sell it. And then Donut jumps up and eats it.
And Donut gains a bunch of charisma and a bunch of intelligence, and is now no longer a pet class, but is a crawler herself. So we have a talking cat
who can cast spells and has an absurd charisma. The effect that Donut gets from the biscuit is immediately gain some stats, and then going forward at every time she levels, she gains a point in strength, a point in intelligence, and 2 points in charisma. But she can't assign points to anything else. Normally, when you level, you get 3 points that you can assign however you want. So this does mean her Dex and her Con will, can't ever get points assigned to them. This also means that since she is now a crawler, she and Carl are in a party together, and since she has the highest total stats, she is the party leader. The party is immediately renamed the Royal Court of Princess Donut.
And hilarity ensues. And essentially, like, there's 7 of these books, and there's 18 levels in the dungeon, and if you get to the bottom of the dungeon, you gain control of the planet.
You win. Importantly, nobody in the history of the Dungeon Crawler reality show, nobody has ever made it past level 13.
Yes, and this is televised to the entire galaxy and is the most popular entertainment.
There are 7 books out so far. The 7th book covers floor 9.
Yeah. We just entered floor 4 on the 3rd book.
Yeah. There's a lot here. But yeah,
the event is technically run by an AI, which is independent of the corporation that is putting on the show, and that also causes some interesting things.
It becomes clear very early on that the AI is a little weird, a little off. But yeah, and so simultaneously with all this, like we are occasionally getting some like insight into the outside of the dungeon, like the different factions within the interstellar, area that all this is occurring in, and what's going on with that. Like, I'm curious where a lot of that is going to go. There's a lot of things being set up beyond just Carl trying to get to the bottom of the dungeon.
And Carl ends up with a catchphrase, which every cat owner will 100% appreciate.
Yep.
Which is basically, GD, donut!
Damn it, donut.
Every time she does something stupid, or she, there's a lot of, just like in any game, there's sometimes cursed items.
Donut has a bad habit of not reading the item description before putting it on, especially if it's shiny, like a tiara.
Oh no.
Yeah. So, I highly suggest this series. It's hilarious. It looks kind of dumb, but also it's too funny. Like, one of the best book series I've read in a long time. I mean, I'm basically going to chain my way through the entire series. I just started book 3 tonight.
Yeah, I finished book 2, and I'm waiting for book 3 to become available for my library. I may break down and just do the
Kindle Unlimited.
The Kindle Unlimited free trial and try to burn through the remainder of them there, because they're all on Kindle Unlimited.
Anyway, any other topics anybody has?
I think we might just have a short show.
I think we might actually just have a short show, and that's perfectly fine.
It's one of those things.
Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again next week. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
See you.